Please welcome Gary Rogers, Chairman of the Bay Area Council Hall of Fame Selection Committee.
As we all know, Steve Jobs is no longer with us, but I feel like he couldn't have been better introduced. I thought that was just beautiful. But we're not done. You know, Larry introduced Steve and compared him to the likes of Thomas Edison and Michelangelo. I think he said Picasso. And as he suggests, probably most of us or many of us have Apple products in our pockets here tonight. And we'll learn from the video that we're about to see, which I think will elaborate on some of Larry's message, that Steve Jobs didn't just create great products, but he fundamentally changed how every one of us interacts with computers and technology and really with one another. So let's take a look at the Steve Jobs video.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. And Apple has been, well, first of all, one's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry.
We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
I found what I loved to do early in life.
Well, I was very lucky. I had a father named Paul who was a pretty remarkable man. And he had a workbench out in the garage where, when I was about 5 or 6, he sectioned off a little piece of it and said, "Steve, this is your workbench now." And he showed me the rudiments of electronics, and I got very interested in that.
Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20.
I felt that we had the opportunity to build a Fortune 500 company in less than 5 years, which had never been done. And a lot of people don't appreciate how much technology was in the original Apple design. It was the world's first single-board computer. It was the first computer that had a programming language built in. It was the world's first computer that had color graphics.
So this was a very unique group. They were extraordinarily talented, and one of his greatest strengths was being able to recruit just incredibly talented people. And he could motivate them to want to follow his vision.
I think Steve Jobs is perhaps the most gifted person in our business in terms of vision and leadership. He really is the father of the personal computer. He really did popularize graphical user interfaces. He really has a passion for great technology.
We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. His iMac. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple.
Steve is the epitome of it because he got fired for being too innovative, and they brought him back, and he was still too innovative, and it just turned out he was right.
Apple became the most valuable company on earth, and it wasn't even one of Steve's goals. He never, he wasn't trying to be rich. He wasn't trying to be famous. He wasn't trying to be powerful. He was obsessed with the creative process and building something that was beautiful.
I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. In 2001, we introduced the first Ipod. And It didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. So, this amazing little device holds 1,000 songs, and it goes right in my pocket.
Steve Jobs understands that creativity and innovation start by thinking differently. He has a deep-rooted belief in the power of education to transform lives, coupled with the desire to make the world a better place. From the earliest days of Apple, he worked to develop partnerships with educators and get computers into schools.
The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device, and we are calling it iPhone.
In the public, we see the products that he created, that he cared so deeply about, that changed all of our lives, the way that we function and communicate. What he wanted to do in his life was create tools that allowed people to work at the highest levels. And I think he did that.
You have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma. The only way to do great work is to love what you do.
Pretty incredible. Now, before we bring out Eddie Q to accept on Steve Jobs' behalf, let's watch a brief message from his other good friend, or one of his other good friends, Bill Campbell, who was another great business leader who worked very closely with Steve and served as a mentor to him in his early days.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful, wonderful event. I want to thank the Bay Area Council and the Bay Area Business Hall of Fame. This is a fantastic event, and I'm just thrilled to be honoring my friend Steve Jobs. I think you just saw from the video what Steve has accomplished. One of the great technology leaders of our time, a great innovator in every way, someone that was so passionate about making technology come to life. I think most of you know what he's accomplished. I think what you don't know is how good a businessman he was. Not just a technology innovator, but a man who really cared deeply about running a business and running it well. In the early days of Apple, he cared a lot about logistics and outsourcing and distribution, everything that a company needed, not just wonderful product, but his focus was on making technology accessible. This is what he did. And today, his legacy is just that. The accessibility of technology to people today is what he stood for, what he did, and made everyone else emulate. When Steve came back to Apple in 1997, I was one of those fortunate people that he asked to be on his board of directors. I watched him rebuild a company that had been fallen down in its stature. He made it better in every way. Cared deeply about the technology vision he did, but he also cared deeply about making it a great, great business. He had courage in everything that he did, from making his own Apple stores to putting together with Tim Cook, one of the great logistical powerhouses that there is in the world today. Steve Jobs is known for these wonderful things, technology, great business, but the things that you don't know about him are those things that I cared so deeply about. He's a great husband. He and his wife, Lorene, are just so close and did everything together. In fact, Lorene extended his life so much by her interest in the science that was treating his incredibly sad disease. He's a great father. He has 3 beautiful children, and he cared deeply about those. But he was a friend of many. Those of you who hear about the irascible side of him, those of us who were his friends, knew exactly how warm and caring he was as a person. And what I will always remember about Steve Jobs is his friendship. But thank you so much for providing him this opportunity.
And now let me introduce Eddie Q, the Senior Vice President of Internet Services and Software at Apple, who worked closely with Steve for several decades and will come out and accept this award on his behalf. Eddie? Congratulations.
It's been 2 years, but it's still hard to see that. I miss Steve every day. He was a colleague, but most important, he was my friend. We talked every day. We talked about everything. Even in my darkest days, he was there for me. When my wife had cancer, he was there for us. He helped me with the doctors, the treatments. He told me a lot about what he was going through in her. And in many ways, she's here tonight because of him. So thank you, Steve. Now, he taught me many things, but none more important than do something you love. It's what he did every single day. It wasn't about fame, it wasn't about fortune, it was about creating great products and not accepting anything less than perfection. As I was coming in today, I was trying to remember a story of the first time I learned that from Steve. And we were launching the iMac, Bondi Blue. I think you saw some of the videos. And we were doing this at the Flint Center in Cupertino. And unfortunately, we couldn't get the venue. Stomp was there the night before. We were launching it the next day, and we could only get in at midnight. So we come in at midnight, and we're going to do rehearsals. The event is at 10 o'clock in the morning. We do pretty good events, as you know. So we're rehearsing, and one of the things we wanted to do is have the iMac come out from the stage as he was introducing it, and it would shine some lights. And I was sitting out in the crowd, and it was empty at the time, and the iMac comes out, and the light shines on it, and I'm like, wow, that is so cool. Steve stops the whole thing, says, "Stop, this sucks." He says, you know, it should come out at the side where you can see the color. The light should be shining on this side. When it turns to the front, that's when it should turn on. And so we go through this whole thing. About 30 minutes later, after we set it all back up, we do the whole thing again. And when I see it come out, I'm like, oh my God, wow. He was absolutely right. It's incredible. And he had that level of detail for everything that he did, and that's what he taught all of us in many ways. But his legacy extends way beyond being the world's most innovative company. It was about the products that he built and how they can change people's lives. Now, let's be honest. He doesn't care about awards, suits, steak. But this one would have been special. You know, he went to school in the Bay Area. He grew up here. He started Apple, Pixar. He met his wife, Lorene, here. His kids were born here. This was a big part of who he was, and he loved the Bay Area. And so on behalf of Lorene, the kids, and everyone at Apple, I'd like to thank you for honoring Steve tonight and having him join the Bay Area Hall of Fame. Thank you, and I love you, Steve.
Nice job.